The name's Lane, Lois Lane, so sit your ass down and listen to each and every word I say. The story begins on the isolated and insular world of Krypton. There existed a global monoculture, unvaried due to family houses, guilds, and hubris. Kryptonians dogmatized their isolationism as proof of their superiority. The dogma was unchallenged for 10,000 years. That was until Jor-El and Lara Lorvan foresaw the unseeable, the end of the world. Planetary tremors had razed entire cities across Krypton. Instruments failed to pinpoint a cause. The Science Council thought no cause for disaster meant no cause for alarm. But Jor-El and Lara dared to test a hypothesis. The duo programmed robotic avatars to analyze the tremors. As expected, the avatars reported no cause, and yet the automatons appeared inconsolable. The couple presented their discovery to the Science Council. They were convicted of heresy and sentenced to the Phantom Zone. However, a tremor enabled them to retreat home. There, Lara gave birth to a son. Meanwhile, Jor-El hastily installed a hibernacle inside a space probe. As Krypton began disintegrating, Lara named her baby Kal-El, a name that meant star child in the old Twank's tongue. The couple then placed their child inside the hibernacle and launched him toward an uncertain future. Would he survive? Would he be loved? Would he be happy? Would he grow to become a good person? All Jor-El and Lara could do was hope. The probe then cleared the planet's thanosphere, peeled away its outer casing, and engaged its warp drive, all while Krypton blew apart. The probe then spent eons exploring 28 galaxies for a suitable home. Sometimes the locals were superstitious, sometimes hateful, often apathetic. Hope is asking the universe for a lot. Hope is asking the universe to keep a promise. But keep it, the universe did. October 16th, 2001. Smallville, a town as isolated and as insular as Krypton. Caught in the slipstream of his probe, planetary debris had followed Kal-El. Irradiated by Krypton's thanosphere, the debris rained as meteors upon Smallville. Crops were irradiated, homes were crushed, bridges were burned, families were separated, spirits were broken. Small villagers were a self-sufficient lot. Dependence on FEMA for food, medicine, and shelter meant that disaster aid was equated with welfare. Aid workers were viewed with suspicion. Meanwhile, Meteor orphans numbered in the dozens. But Smallville cared for its own. Orphans were adopted by their kinsmen or their neighbors. Eventually, small villagers forgave their helplessness, but they were unable to forget it. For you see, there was one orphan who was neither neighbor nor kinsman, a strange visitor. Jonathan and Martha Kent were a childless couple. With big and empty hearts, they were kind to anyone stranded, lost, or abandoned. You could say they had a habit of welcoming the stranger. They found Kal-El in a cornfield during the meteor shower. When the Meteor orphans were cataloged, Martha petitioned for adoption. She named her spit-curled foundling, Clark, after her maiden name. The Kents took in a stranger, gave it their name, dared to call it Son. For Smallville, there was no greater sin. Although the locals at times dismissed them, the Kents were a happy family, but even a happy family can hide a family secret. One day, during an outing, Clark jumped up and stayed there. When he came down, Jonathan and Martha sat Clark down and told him the truth. He was indeed found during the meteor shower, in a cornfield, next to a starship. And so Clark came to live a double life, one at home, one at school, neither providing an escape. He could see his starship under the storm cellar. He could hear the gossip from student bathrooms. An alien in his own home, a pariah in his hometown. Like that song on Sesame Street said, one of these things is not like the others. Clark lived a world apart from Smallville, a world apart from people, a world apart from himself. Worse, Clark blamed himself for Smallville's suffering. He blamed himself for his parents' ostracism. Could he wish it all away? Could he forget himself? Could he go on pretending he was a real boy? The Kents accepted that Clark was a special needs child. Forsaking all they thought they knew, Jonathan and Martha raised Clark with all the wisdom their situation could endow. Family was more than biology. People are not their origins. A soul is comprised of empathy, love, and wisdom. All the colors contain the same primary ones, and a person is defined by the decisions they make. Life is all about action. One such action was when Clark rescued a kitten from some hungry coyotes. Impulsive, his fingernail scratched the kitten's eye. Afterward, he promised himself to always be gentle, to always be careful. Since Clark had no friends, he simply named the cat Pal. Just Pal. The Kents provided the best influences they could. Movie nights watching Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Library visits to check out To Kill a Mockingbird. All the while, Clark would hum Part of That World or Strangers Like Me. Eventually, Clark found his niche. He took to wearing stage glasses to avoid sports. That led to him becoming a school reporter. So fast was he at writing stories, the school paper was nicknamed the Daily Clark. And he found acceptance among the nerds, like Pete Ross. It was Pete who introduced Clark to Captain America comics. The comic was based on an actual superhero. Clark daydreamed of teaming up with the Star-Spangled Avenger. Other times, he pretended he was Super Soldier, the next Captain America. Martha, though, suggested a less violent moniker, Superboy. It was during the Caroline County tornado of 2011 when Clark saved his first life. As the Kents took shelter in the storm cellar, he saw a girl swept skyward. Clark did not hesitate. He ran faster than he ever ran before and leapt into the maelstrom. There, he surrounded classmate Lana Lang with his indestructible body. Clark steered them free, but was unable to correct his trajectory. The two landed in Lake Schuster, with Clark taking the brunt of the impact. Lana was found by her older sister, Caitlin. While Lana was too disoriented to know what had happened, Caitlin had witnessed the fall. And afterward, she put a stop to all her bathroom gossip. The Kents wanted to dissuade Clark from becoming a super Samaritan. Such a life would entail violence, unintended consequences, and perhaps even a savior complex. But Jonathan and Martha knew Clark could not hide on the farm forever. If using his gifts to help others was his only way to feel whole and connect with people, then so be it. Clark learned first aid, fire safety, debate, ethics, mechanics, body language, and Good Samaritan law. Then came the day. The day Clark learned it was not enough to intervene. You must stand for something. Your purpose must mean something. Something greater than yourself. A cause. A burden hardest to bear. But bear it, you will. It was the July 4th fair. Although insular, Smallville was unlike other towns throughout Maryland. While towns like Hurlock, Oakland, Snow Hill, and Cumberland hosted Cleverns, Smallville did not. Around 2016, all 10 Cleverns throughout Maryland were converted to house the paramilitary watchdogs. Smallville's July 4th fair was renowned for attracting tourists. For the watchdogs, tourist meant target. While touring the boardwalk, Clark, Pete, and Lana witnessed a bomb derailing a roller coaster. As the coaster crashed, Lana fell to her knees, watching Caitlin die. As Pete moved Lana to safety, Clark ducked into a replica of an old-timey phone booth and emerged a new man. All the years of study, acting, and training led to this moment. The watchdogs had commandeered the local TV station so the alpha dog could address locals. Back at the fair, tourists and locals alike were arranged in a lineup. Whoever was deemed foreign, liberal, secular, or erudite was to be executed. It was then, in a single bound, Clark leaped onto the scene in what would become known as the superhero landing. Hiding behind Lana's Aunt Nell, the pack leader mocked the Teen of Steel. With swift precision, Superboy disarmed and captured the pack before any watchdog could escape Smallville. Afterward, Martha referred to the watchdogs as simply un-American. Upon hearing her words, the meaning of his actions became clear. The watchdogs stood for xenophobia, scapegoating, demagoguery, and hate, each of which thrives on lies and injustice and an idealized past. Such is the way of the fascists. If the watchdogs stood for lies, injustice, and the fascistic way, then Superboy would stand for the opposite: truth, justice, and the American way. The Kents were quick to remind Clark that no good deed goes unpunished. Lana lost her sister. The watchdogs became emboldened, and opportunists are always wont to claim triumph and tragedy. But not everyone would be so avaricious. Following the ratification of the 28th Amendment, Pres Rickard was elected in 2016 as the first teen president. Pres, and yes, that was his actual name, was a singularly inspiring person. Like Superboy, he too was a lifelong fan of Captain America. Rickard welcomed Superboy to the White House. It was there Superboy gave what would be considered the speech that inaugurated the new heroic age.
Thank you for inviting me, Mr. President. Today should not be about me. I should not be here speaking of the events of July 4th. The survivors should be. Let us all not make that mistake again. Instead, I will merely answer a question about me. Who am I? I am someone who admires humanity. I admire humanity's strength to persevere and endure despite overwhelming obstacles. I admire humanity's will, compassion, and hope. I am a child of hope. I come from another world, a world whose name I know not. How I came to possess my gifts, I know not. What I do know is, it's not about where you were born or what powers you have. It's about what you do. It's about action. On July 4th, I leapt into action. My action was, in a single bound, a leap of faith. People are afraid of what they do not understand. So, I had to make a leap of faith first. I hoped the trust part would come later. You see, I am someone who has lived among you as an outcast. I was different, but I was never alone. I want everyone to know they too are not alone. There is a better tomorrow. I dream of that tomorrow. Some of you might assume I'm just another teenager living in a dream world. Good. Dreams lift us up, encourage us to take a leap of faith. Dreams save us and transform us. And on my soul, I swear until my dream of a world where dignity, honor, and justice become the reality we all share, I'll never stop fighting. I am young, but I am not naive. I know that fight will be a never-ending battle, but fight it, I will. I'll never stop fighting, ever, and neither should you. For you see, I'm not a savior. You are. All of you are. I do what I do because I was given a gift, but all of you were given gifts too. Use them to make each other's lives better. Who am I? A friend.
Of course, youth's greatest adversary is always the old, wise at times, but ever set in its ways. The elders of the universe approached Superboy to to become heir to the Infinity Gems. They offered wagers in strategy, combat, negotiation, knowledge, philosophy, and timing. Clark bested the elders with a simple question: why? Each elder gave a different answer, causing infighting to erupt. Clever, Clark palmed the gems and hid each in a separate location. He figured if 6 immortal beings, each a master of a particular skill, refused to aid people, then no one could be trusted with the gems. As Clark grew, so did his list of questions about himself. From where did he originate? Who were his people? Why was he alone? And how did he come to possess powers? The answers came on his 16th birthday. Unknown to Clark, that day coincided with the Kryptonian Age of Ascension. The starship gifted him with a holobook and a sunstone crystal. The holobook included images of crystal caves growing into crystal cities. Working a hunch, Clark journeyed to the isolation of the White North. There, he planted the sunstone crystal as a seed. It then grew into a replica of those same crystal caves depicted in the holobook. Clark dubbed it the Fortress of Solitude. Inside, Jor-El and Lara appeared at the age they would have been had Krypton not exploded. They told Clark of his birth world, its wonders, and its follies. The servitor droids discovered his powers were a reaction to yellow sunlight. Clark asked, "What am I to do with this knowledge?" Jor-El and Lara could only answer with all the wisdom the situation could endow.
Tell our story so that others might learn. Tell our story so our fate does not become theirs. Tell our story, for our story is a call to action.
Inspired by the revelation, Martha recreated the ceremonial raiment worn by the warrior diplomats of Krypton. Initially, Clark felt silly wearing it, but Jonathan was quick to note that the man makes the suit. And so Clark did. No feat was too small. No challenge was too intimidating. The tasks no one wanted to do were the ones that needed the most doing. The people no one wanted to help were the ones in the most need. One day, a compartment within Clark's starship opened to reveal another strange visitor, Crypto. The super-enemies were led by Astrolad. While Superboy preferred peace through agreement, Astrolad preferred violent revolution. For him, America was for rebels, not good boys. He was an angry young man. Wonder whatever happened to him. I mean, what happens when the angry young man is no longer young? As the old saying goes, we live and learn, change and grow, older but not always wiser, stronger but not necessarily smarter. Life is a dance of steps, taken forward and backward, time spent standing still and twirling in circles as we follow our own shadows. Yeah, that perfectly sums up the Eternals. While flying over the South Pacific, Clark happened upon Monster Island. Folklore insisted for centuries that the island swam from place to place. There, Clark beheld a never-ending variety of creatures, no two alike. Curiously, the creatures seemed to protect each other as well. Clark then witnessed a flying man murdering one such creature. Ignoring Clark, the stranger rocketed south. Before he could pursue, Clark heard another creature roaring its last breath. That poor creature had been slain by Elsa Bloodstone. She explained the island gave literal birth to monsters. The guy Clark saw earlier was there to hunt creatures for sport. She called the monsters for a different reason, to keep them from wandering off to harm humans. While following Elsa, Clark discovered the island also birthed sapient, rational beings. While he sought communication, Elsa sought carnage. Before she could cull the frightened newborns, monstrous soldiers came ashore, wielding ray guns that fired green beams. Those beams subdued Elsa and Clark. Taken underground, Clark awoke powerless. He and Elsa were then summoned to a royal court. There, the trespassers were introduced to Toad, ruler of the deviant race. Turns out, Monster Island was the center, birthland of the deviants. Those megafauna on the surface were excessive deviants, those born forever either in pain or naivete. Utilizing a miniature stun grenade that she dug out of her skin, Elsa escaped to her base camp. From there, she recovered a cache of bombs. Weakened, Superboy donned a protective morph suit and confronted Elsa. Disarming the bombs, he even persuaded Toad to spare Elsa's life. Afterward, Clark flew to Antarctica, where he discovered Olympia, the Eternal City. Invited to the court of Zurus, the strange visitor was welcomed. Superboy gave an ultimatum: stop murdering the excessive deviants, or get broken. For a moment, Zurus was silent. Then he laughed. Phastos, the forger, entrapped Clark for analysis. Ajak, the voice, then asked her celestial creators who created Superboy's people. Who plagiarized the Celestials' design? The Celestials knew not. You learn something new about yourself every day. Toadie's army then came ashore with an Argonite bomb. Zurus released Superboy, and Icarus agreed to stop hunting excessive deviants. Growing up, meteorites around Smallville were a daily danger for Clark. The rocks came in different colors, each with a different effect. Green was toxic, red caused reckless euphoria, gold weakened him, silver afflicted him with paranoid delusions, and jeweled disfigured him with painful mutations. Due to irradiation by Krypton's Thanosphere, Clark named the meteorites Kryptonite. Every encounter with Kryptonite was a near-death experience. One such encounter would end his friendship with Lana. Following a battle with Astrolad, Clark was found near Kryptonite by Lana. Grateful, Clark came out of the phone booth. He confessed his secret required him to suffocate under dishonesty and fear. So he took a leap of faith with her. But faith isn't always rewarded. Lana struggled with her traumas for years. First, her parents died in the meteor shower. Then her sister died on that roller coaster. She often found herself sleepwalking to the cemetery where her family was buried. Turns out, Lana was the graveyard girl of local legend. She wanted nothing more than to move forward with her life. But Clark's confession brought her full circle, and full circle is not forward. Senior year came and went. College was just on the other side of summer. It would be a cruel summer. While his schoolmates traveled, enlisted, or moved, Clark was left on his own, and it appeared Crypto had wandered off. The future was not to be young for much longer. Then they appeared, strange visitors from another time, Cosmic Boy, Lightning Lad, Saturn Girl, and their leader, Iron Lad, the Legion of Superheroes. Iron Lad explained they were Superboy's fan club from the future. He informed his idol that the old of the future needed the wisdom only the youth of the past could provide. Before he could process the situation, Clark was teleported to the Superman Museum in the year 3001. Iron Lad bragged he was the curator of the museum. Everything was exactly as Superboy had left it, courtesy of Computo. Offering a change of clothes and a tour, Iron Lad explained himself.
My name is Nathaniel Richards. The Legion of Superheroes is dedicated to reviving the tradition of the heroic age. People once listened to the youth. It was the youth who articulated collaboration between the xenoplanets and the mutant worlds. It was the youth who outlined cooperation among the United Planets. But the ensuing peace made youth complacent, aloof, and apathetic. They aged into being selfish, oblivious, and heartless old people. Wars with non-member worlds resulted in disproportionate burdens among the United Planets, threatening dissolution. The solution was Solaris, a living sun, cloned from living planets, clad in celestial armor, powered by a speed force turbine programmed to mimic Galactus, the ultimate in push-button warfare, the perfect doomsday weapon. Assailants no longer look their quarry in the eye. There are no soldiers anymore, no warriors. There's no longer burnout, desertion, rules, empathy, or mercy. No longer are there surrenders, armistices, or treaties. When we become alienated from the carnage we craft, we abandon empathy and normalize atrocity. Once, I was a lackadaisical academic. Until I studied you, Clark. You changed something inside me, and altered the course of my future. The Legion is controversial. We intervene not with ruthlessness or automation, but with our own hands. Wars cannot always be avoided, but they do not have to be endless. When opposing sides decide to settle conflict, however they choose, let them settle it, because they no longer can tolerate to stare death in the face of another person. History is tradition, a tradition of appealing to empathy. But I fear that history is headed away from that tradition, which is why I brought you here. Your legacy is one of empathy, Clark. Your speech at the White House inspired generations to listen to the youth. It is my utmost hope the United Planets will listen to you.
Superboy contemplated Iron Lad's plea for what seemed like hours. Clark was no stranger at having the weight of the world on his shoulders. But it was how Iron Lad articulated and presented the situation that unnerved Clark in a way he had never been. Regardless, Superboy had resolved to pursue a dream of a world endowed with dignity, honor, and justice. And pursue it he would. The future depended on it. In that moment, Clark felt alone in a way he never felt before. Was there anyone who could relate? Yes, there was. Her name was Nura Nal, the Dream Girl. She hailed from Naltor, a world of mutants who channeled the Sage Force. Iron Lad tasked her to advise and help Clark acclimate to the 30th century. Nura's power was precognition. Although Iron Lad was a gifted strategist and Brainiac 5 was a scientific genius, Nura was the super weapon, and it weighed on her. The future depended on her.
I see hypertime branches. I do not predict the future so much as minimize surprise. It all depends on where my attention veers and what I do or do not notice. Whichever outcome I choose is the hypertime where I am now. Am I behind door number 1? Or am I behind door number 2? Dark, I know. But sometimes, in order to find the light, you have to risk the dark. And how do we risk that dark? By doing as anyone does, by learning from the past.
Clark promised to help if Iron Lad would answer one question about the Legion members.
Nathaniel, please tell me how many can fly.
Thanks to our flight rings, every single one.
While touring the clubhouse, Clark met Dawnstar, the tracker. She was returning from a manhunt for the evasive nomad. He appeared on the Legion's doorstep, claiming he was lost, but Iron Lad knew his history well. Nomad was a denizen of Dimension Z, a limbo realm ruled by his creator, Arnim Zola, a Nazi fugitive. Iron Lad wasted no time tasering Nomad. However, the refugee from Dimension Z escaped custody. Dawnstar had been tracking him down ever since. Iron Lad suspected Nomad had become Kang, a reputed gangster. The so-called Legion of Kang included the Emerald Empress, Mordru, Tyr, and the Infinite Man, whose powers could reset time. Brainiac 5 mentioned that Infinite Man was once Jackson Rugarth, curator of the Time Travel Museum and an old friend of Iron Lad's. Infinite Man's resets were innumerable. Dreamgirl was unable to predict where and when Kang would be. When the Legion did confront Kang, the gangster got away. Like Nomad, Kang could evade Dawnstar. Meanwhile, Dreamgirl was coaching Clark to address the United Planets. Labyrinthine politics requires precognitive talent. Nura made Clark laugh with her questions about life in the 21st century. Hours together became days, then weeks, and finally, first love. First love has no future. Clark and Nura were destined to go their separate ways, worlds apart. Until then, they would make every second count.
Nora, can you see our future?
Yes. Take me there.
The Kent farm had become a World Heritage Site. Security made an exception for Superboy and Nura to enter. There, where he had taken his first flight, Clark proposed to Nura Nal. The engagement ring was an enigmatic artifact found in the Superman Museum. While Nura was saying yes, United President R.J. Brand was saying no. Solaris's next target was to be the prison planet of Takron Galtos. Who would care to mourn criminals?
Like a ceremonial sword, adorned with the pretensions of war, Brand plays at emotion. He threatens me. No, my ideals. With soldiers who have known no battles, he thinks I depart in defeat. My walking away to be concession. No. My departure means I am now free.
Later, at the museum, Nathaniel proposed a plan that chilled Superboy to the bone. Iron Lad wanted the Legion to attack Solaris. Superboy's jaw dropped. The Legion was meant to revive the heroic age, and Superboy inaugurated that age. Heroes are not weapons. Heroes are friends, and a friend rescues you. The Legionnaires were uncertain. Attack Solaris or evacuate the inmates. Which action was the more heroic one to take? It was then a trouble alert flashed on the museum computer. Lian Yu was under siege. Lian Yu was an island lost to time. The island could relocate anywhere in hypertime. It was where the Timekeepers held court. It was also where Superboy had hidden the Time Gem. Cosmic Boy opted to lead the mission to Lian Yu. Iron Lad was free to confront Solaris, alone. Meanwhile, on Lian Yu, the piratical Sclarian raiders had established a beachhead. Mordru had conjured forth a Dominator fleet. Emerald Empress was puppeteering the reassembled emerald body of Akron. Tyr ravaged the island with his lightspeed vanguard. And Infinite Man reset the invasion like a video game. And conducting this orchestra of warfare was Kang. Upon breaching the court, Kang realized if the Timekeepers had the Time Gem, they would have used it. Meanwhile, Dreamgirl timed her visions with Infinite Man's resets. Likewise, Sprite timed her illusions to confuse the villain. Superboy donned a morph suit from the museum to negate any kryptonite weapons. Vengeful, the would-be conqueror executed Cosmic Boy with sick satisfaction. Kid Quantum volunteered to escort her husband's body back to Brawl. As the Legion mourned, Superboy noticed Dawnstar was absent. Clark's flight ring then received coordinates for Takron Galtos. Originally, Takron Galtos was known as Battleworld, a region of the Gamelands. During the crisis, it was teleported to Hypertime 0.1958 and was now a prison planet. In the bowels of the Manhattan Ghetto, Dawnstar introduced Superboy to Nomad. The fugitive revealed his name was Ian Rogers, the adopted son of Captain America. Skeptical, Superboy demanded proof. Ian shared that Clark would indeed one day meet Captain America. When they meet, Clark confesses his childhood daydream of being Super Soldier, the next Captain America. Convinced, Clark asked why Nomad was hiding on Takron Galtos. Nomad explained he was waiting for Superboy. Superboy asked who was Kang. Nomad answered that Kang was the ultimate slasher. He could kill his enemies in their crib, but even he had rules. Kang could branch Hypertime, but couldn't kill its roots. Nomad bowed his head and choked up his courage. Kang was Iron Lad. Ian went on to illuminate how Mordru sprung him from the kiln. Kang then interrogated Nomad in the Library of Worlds. An escape artist, Ian commandeered a cosmic treadmill and noticed preset coordinates. He wound up in Chronopolis on Takron Galtos. Dawnstar said the Library of Worlds existed in the Speed Force wall. It registered as both nowhere and everywhere to her. Judicious, she never told Iron Lad of her cosmic awareness. A wise action, since Iron Lad registered as both nowhere and everywhere. Kang figured Nomad knew of the Time Gem's whereabouts. He figured wrong. Using charts archived in the Library of Worlds, Kang triangulated Lian Yu's next location. He figured the island was too obvious a hiding place. This time, he figured right. And he figured Lian Yu would provide a timely distraction. Clark confirmed that the Time Gem was indeed secure elsewhere. In fact, he glanced at it when the trouble alert sounded, just a split-second sneak peek, too fast for the naked eye. Dawnstar then asked, what if the naked eye wasn't human? Just then, the inky black sky brightened to bloody red. Solaris had entered orbit, bathing Clark in weakening red sunlight. Tossing his flight ring to Nomad, Superboy held his super breath as Dawnstar guided them through a barrage of kryptonite lasers from an assailing battleship. Once clear, Nomad and Dawnstar activated their flight ring's wormhole projectors and carried Superboy safely back to Earth. Afterward, Takron Galtos was consumed by the red sunset of Solaris. The trio arrived in time for Superboy's scheduled speech at the United Planets. Once there, Superboy accused Iron Lad of Cosmic Boy's murder. While Saturn Girl was unable to verify Iron Lad's thoughts due to his Sentio Metallico armor, she was, however, able to verify Clark's. Since he was going to do it anyway, Iron Lad promptly ordered Operation Timely Intervention. Remember when Iron Lad opted to shut down Solaris alone? Turns out, he uploaded Computo's AI into Solaris. Utilizing its phenomenal speed, the living sun burned entire planets, exterminating billions.
The United Planets has traded empathy for bloodless hands. Eliminate its posh comfort. Make it desperate, and it will at last empathize with the carnage it has created. Collaboration does not bring peace among worlds. Agreement does. An agreement to a common enemy. Let that enemy be desperation. Your time had it right, Clark. Your time was an order built upon a foundation of morality. grown in a garden of empathy, supported by pillars of glory, under a roof of mercy. Survival reminds us of how precious life is. Desperation informs us of how invaluable life is. The future is about to head in the right direction, with some timely intervention.
It was then the earlier battleship appeared in orbit. As Solaris neared, Superboy could feel his powers weakening under the living star's red sunlight. The moment triggered Dreamgirl to envision innumerable futures. In each future, Kang won.
I know myself. Power? It must be earned. Reality? I'm a simple man. Space? I'd like to think I am more ambitious than that. The mind? Mine is its own place. And my soul? I've delved into its depths and tamed its waters. Only time is left to conquer.
As the Legion fought battles on two fronts, Kang triggered a booby trap. With a few distractions, a little time travel, and some sleight of hand, the flight rings were rigged with Phantom Zone projectors. One by one, the Legionnaires were transmuted into living phantoms. Suddenly, Kang was punched from his perch of triumph by Superboy. How? Nomad had been wearing Superboy's flight ring, that's how. As the phantoms of the Legion began to dissipate, Clark called out to Nura. Nura had preset a time bubble at the Time Travel Museum. Kang could branch hypertime, but he could not kill its roots, even with the time gem. As Clark escaped to the 21st century, Kang could be heard over the comm system.
Do you know why I chose to be called Kang? You ought to know. In the extinct Twink's tongue, it means forever.
Alone. Clark just felt so alone. For once in his life, one of those things was just like the others. Using the Phantom Zone projector found in his starship, Clark attempted to free the Legion. However, his projector was a very different model from Kang's. Time flew, but Superboy could not. Would his heart soar again? It was a question he posed to himself every day. One day, while meandering about the farm, Clark discovered Crypto had been hibernating in their starship. Apparently, Kang knew Crypto would sense his intentions and stashed him in hibernation. Jonathan took the opportunity to impart some wisdom.
During my youth, I met Louise. She was an absolute wonder. Louise sacrificed a whole summer just to help me on the farm after my dad passed away, toiling under the blistering sun till I was sure I would perish from heat stroke. I reckoned if I died, I would die happy. She made me laugh from sunup till sundown. Trouble was, one morning she woke up and hurried to the mirror. She felt a lump. After the next year's harvest, we said our goodbyes. For a while, no one in the town approached me, fearing I was so fragile I might shatter on contact. The widows and the widowers would visit, tell their stories as I'm telling you mine. I kept at the farming, figuring the only way to work through something is to just work. But what I was actually doing was closing myself off. Living is a part of healing. Hadn't realized it. And then I met a redhead. A woman of the world. A miracle. And she sure has made me laugh till my sides hurt. Moral is, you're crying now when you used to laugh. But one day, you'll hear someone laughing, and you'll turn around and be surprised The person laughing is you.
Clark grew. Not a boy, not yet a man. One night, Superboy was flying home when he noticed a wrecked tractor trailer along Maryland Route 318. Clark scanned the area with his super hearing and X-ray vision. The wreckage was a cargo truck from Fisk Logistics. The human garbage, or human cargo on board, were the henchmen for hire. Puma was the eyes and ears. Chemistro, the sniper. Cyclone and Nitro were the pitch and the bat. Graviton was the trap. And Blackout would conceal Solar for the execution. Clark figured they were the prey. But where was the predator? Superboy got an adamantium punch into the cold, cold ground for an answer. Spitting blood, Clark narrowed his gaze at his star-spangled attacker. It looked like Captain America. Puma acted quickly. He figured right that Superboy was weaker at night. He signaled for Blackout to unveil Solar. Night flared into day as Clark was bathed in healing sunlight. Superboy punched Captain America into Chemistro's crosshairs. A little corrosive spray, a disorienting maelstrom, a concussive bang, and some bone-cracking G-force, and the henchman lived to hench another day. When the state police arrived, Puma whispered 2 words so low only he and Superboy could hear. Codename, Stripes. That morning, Superboy was summoned to the White House. President Rickard informed his friend that the henchmen were taken into protective custody. Location undisclosed. Rickard did disclose why he and Superboy were actually meeting. The armored attacker was Jeff Mace, a vigilante missing for 2 years. Known as the Patriot, Mace was, like Superboy and Rickard, inspired by Captain America. During World War II, America ran the weapon program. In fact, Captain America, known as Operation Rebirth, had actually been Weapon 1. However, Abraham Erskine, inventor of the super soldier serum, kept phony notes. When he perished, so did the secrets of the serum. Following Captain America's disappearance, the weapon program was shuttered. Roosevelt ordered the execution of all personnel and incineration of all samples and data. However, Truman rescinded the order. In the 50s, Eisenhower organized STARS, Superhuman Tactical Augmentation Research Sciences. An assay group, STARS was meant to create the next Captain America. The director of STARS was Johann Schmidt, an asset funneled from Germany via Operation Paperclip. During the 80s, the group was spun off as a private contractor. By 2001, Schmidt's grandson, Johann III, had ascended to navigate STARS. Johann III was born in Switzerland. His eccentric hobby was hiring sparring partners to mimic Captain America. Superboy gazed upon Rickard's unshaven countenance. He had never seen his friend so rattled. A sleepless Rickard dropped another bombshell. An intern, Amelia Harcourt, was Rickard's agent within the Commission on Superhuman Activities. According to her, Chairman Douglas Rockwell installed a closed-circuit conduit to an anonymous party. During meetings, Rockwell would discount Commissioner Waller's concerns about the secret empire. Rockwell regarded the secret empire as a modern Prester John, an urban legend to inspire the right. Discussion was often steered toward Commissioner Gyrick's criticisms of President Rickard's pro-mutant policies. Harcourt was approached by a journalist who suspected a connection among the CSA, the Secret Empire, and STARS. That connection? Captain America sightings. Harcourt then set up a clandestine rendezvous. The meetup got Clark nostalgic for his school reporter days. He would pose as a concert goer while his contact chaperoned a nephew. That contact was Ben Urich, muckraker for the Daily Bugle. Urich had been investigating walled-off towns and gated communities. A source claimed conservative elites from gated communities were suddenly vacationing in wall-off towns. these towns produced undocumented births and armed reactionaries. Documents stolen from the Life Foundation, a conservative think tank, labeled these towns a secret empire. And the Captain America sightings? The source claimed stars disposed of failed candidates on abeyance missions to these towns. Urich suspected the source knew more. Superboy wanted to confirm this source, personally. To Urich's surprise, the source agreed. An ultrasonic signal then beckoned Superboy to a safe house. There, an enigmatic man calling himself Johnny Clark opened files taken from stars. Johnny then told the tragic tales of Operation Protocide. Protocide involved dispensing red, white, and blue pills to its recruits. These pills enhanced intelligence, healing, and endurance, respectively. However, the side effects accelerated mental and physical decline. Skeptical, Superboy asked Johnny for his true story as collateral. Johnny educated the Teen of Steel that all stories are true, even those based on lies. Superboy insisted, listening closely to the informant's heartbeat. Once upon a time, Johnny had been a runaway from Metropolis. He wound up on the side of a road in Maryland. A kindly couple offered him a ride, a hot meal, and a bed. Came morning, they offered to foster him. They taught him to read using Captain America comics. It would be years before Superboy learned of Johnny's actual name. Meanwhile, Rockwell was unnerved at the suspicions of the other commissioners. He informed his liege of his own suspicions about Harcourt. The disclosure triggered devilish laughter. Like the obedient dog that he was, Rockwell carried out his master's orders. He instructed Number 1, leader of the Secret Empire, to unleash the Watchdogs. Afterward, the Secret Empire initiated Operation Götterdämmerung. Aerial, subterranean, and submersible drones detonated kiloton blasts on National Guard armories and military bases. Simultaneously, President Rickard was assassinated in the Oval Office. The news minions would only focus on outing Prez as a mutant. The mainstream hilariously kept asking where all this was coming from. Superboy was one such mainstreamer who wondered where all these fascists were hiding. The White Dragon set him straight.
Hiding? Well, bless your heart, we don't hide. The cameras have just chosen not to snap our picture is all. We've always been out in the open. Just standing off to the right and blogging and broadcasting and donating and voting where the fancy newsies dare not venture, where you can't order fancy sushi or quality latte. In those places, a mainstream politician can blow into town and press the flesh in front of Confederate, Nazi, or straight pride flags. We don't hide. We exist where glamour doesn't. And where glamour does exist, we're genteel in our freedom of expression. You know who actually hides, Superboy? Think. Academics, mainstreamers, woke-tards, those who live in coffee shops and boutiques. Those who are actually shocked by us being out in the open are the ones who've actually been hiding. The best way to hide from X-ray vision is in plain sight. Speaking of which, you'll never track me down. I ain't even from this earth. My grandpappy was, though, but not me. I'm only here because my son and his fruity friends tossed my ass through a nexus point. Ha! I ain't got papers. I'm an illegal alien as much as you are. Ha ha ha! Now ain't we a pair?
Martial law was declared. Neighbors turned in neighbors for un-American, un-Christian, or unnatural activities. All Superboy could do was random. Meanwhile, the Watchdogs returned to Smallville with a vengeance. Seeking to avoid the firing squads, small villagers pointed their fingers at their neighbors, the Kents. Operation Götterdämmerung ended as abruptly as it began. The Watchdogs were ordered to stand down and stand by. Douglas Rockwell was found dead in his office. His head was disfigured to resemble a red skull. The calling card had a clear message. The Red Skull lived again. God help us all. Neighbors are supposed to help neighbors, right? Well, neighbors stood by as the watchdogs dragged the Kents from their home and stood them up for a firing squad. Then, before a single rifle was raised, Jonathan Kent collapsed from a heart attack. Martha knelt by him and cried for help as her neighbors just stood by. Superboy then arrived and frantically attempted to revive Mr. Kent. All those things Clark could do, all those powers, and he couldn't even save his father. Clark lost his country, his friend, and his father all on the same day. Anger, rage, wrath. Not even Clark Kent was immune. He caught, shook, and tossed his neighbors one by one, demanding why. Martha begged him to remember his promise. Clark then froze. He realized from then on he could be Superboy no more. A new president took office. The Mutant Registration Act was passed. The watchdogs were incarcerated. The news minions never mentioned the secret empire. Clark hit the books. He soon memorized every aspect of American politics in preparation for a career in muckraking journalism. And then, one spring night, silence. Pal was no longer purring. As autumn leaves began to litter on the wind, Clark Kent departed Smallville. Small villagers avoided eye contact as his bus disembarked. As Clark watched the scenery scroll by, he overheard neither a whisper nor a sigh, just his mother's reminder to call. A wise man once wrote, "What can you say about leaving a place you loved? You hope it made you who you are, challenged your beliefs, pushed you out of your comfort zone, and gave you the strength to demand better. So you're prepared for what's to come." And then there came a day unlike any other. Earthlings had known Atlanteans, androids, monsters, super soldiers, and aliens. But they never knew gods. Darkseid, ruler of Apocalypse, and Lady Loki, trickster of Asgard, celebrated their wedding by invading the multiverse. The greatest generation remembered where it was when Pearl Harbor was attacked. The boomers remembered where they were when King and the Kennedys were shot. Gen X remembered when the Cold War ended. And I remember the day when gods damned the earth. I'm a journalist. I have to find words to describe the dimensions and nuances of any situation. And on that day, I was at a loss for such words. We all were. An alien, an Amazon, a god, a knight, a ninja, a soldier, 6 heroes against a pantheon, demons, and giants. A plan was devised, but Clark couldn't engage. Looking upon his allies, Clark could only see the faces of Nomad, Dargo, Nathaniel, and Chiroptera. He simply couldn't do it. He couldn't be Superboy anymore.
Listen, son, we've all lost someone, and life is about paying their legacy forward. It's about action. You have your whole life ahead and entire lives in your hands. So, no, this is not a job for Superboy. This is a job for Superman.
Whoever said you should never meet your heroes never met Captain America. Clark punched Darkseid back to the hellscape from whence he came. It was then I found my words. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. Hey, can I write or can I write? I mean, I have to. I tend to trip over my own tongue. Or haven't you noticed? I was there among the crowds of survivors. I saw them, no, I beheld them. The Justice League. I heard someone call them the world's greatest superheroes. I wrote they were just 6 heroic souls. We had been attacked by a threat unlike any that came before, and we had been saved by 6 heroic souls. Among the ruins of the Carbonell house stood Iron Man. The orphanage was his mother's legacy. It was Superman who reached out and touched his shoulder. Iron Man memorialized the Carbonell House as the Hall of Justice. Although Iron Man shared many similarities with Iron Lad, Clark was keen to tell himself that Tony was not Nathaniel. Then, one day, the Golden Avenger arrived at the Hall of Justice wearing silver. Clark collapsed on some rooftop in Queens. He could hear the pounding of his mighty heart. He could feel a rare sweat on his brow, and, despite his lung capacity, he felt like he was suffocating. Fortunately, Clark had found himself in a friendly neighborhood.
Hello. I was, just swinging around and I saw you here. I never ignore a call for help. And if that look on your face isn't a call for help, I don't know what is. I'm listening.
Clark did what he always did best. He reached out. He confided in this kind soul. Clark shared his fear of the future. Why live for a better tomorrow when no better tomorrow will exist? Spider-Man listened, thought about it a moment, and then answered.
It was after I got my powers. I was trying to make a quick buck when this guy robbed the venue. I was acting like a big shot and ignored the manager calling for help. A couple of nights later, I came home and found my aunt outside our house with a few squad cars. My uncle. I overheard the cops saying they cornered the guy. I swung over, found him before the cops did. It was the same guy who robbed the venue. I never ignored a call for help again. Take it from me. You can only learn from the past, act on the present, and hope for the future. You think tomorrow is lost. What about the day after tomorrow? But what do I know? I tell all my problems to a gargoyle named Bruce.
Superman flashed his trademark smirk. And that, true believer, was how Superman met Spider-Man. It would be a tale the wall crawler would tell for many years to come. I remember it like yesterday. I was employed as a talking haircut for the Daily Star. I was auditioning for some new outrage program. Perry White was my producer then. I remember telling him my facts should do the screaming, not me. I said if I screamed any longer, I was going to start sounding like Kathleen Turner. It was then I heard the most curious laugh. I glanced over and saw a guy who seemed surprised to be laughing, and then he smiled at me as if to thank me. Inspired, I declined to host the program. Instead, I sought a different role. I wanted to find more than anger in the world. So, I hustled an interview with the one and only Superman. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what to expect. I just figured everyone wanted a piece of him, to put him in the hot seat. I didn't know where he'd been. No one did. I figured I'd make him feel at home, make him feel like a regular person, make him feel safe. He descended onto my balcony ever so gently. He flashed a bashful smile and a quick hand wave. So polite, so cute. I couldn't believe it was his first interview. I wanted to ask where he disappeared, about Goddardammerung, or his role in the Justice League, but I couldn't. All I wanted to ask was why. Why become a superhero? Why believe in people? Why bother at all? His eyes seemingly stared off into a memory. Then he answered.
I still believe in service, sacrifice, compassion, and love. I'm not going to abandon the things that made me who I am because of what will or will not happen. Hope is fighting for the future.
Metropolis is unlike most major cities. For one thing, it has no blue blood dynasties to speak of. It is truly a city of the individual. One individual was George Latimer, a kingmaker for that rare metropolitan. That rare metropolitan being the reactionary kind. Before he disappeared, Daily Star publisher Morgan Edge hired Latimer to editorialize. Fed up, Perry White walked out on the Daily Star and took all the rising talent with him. The Daily Planet was once a newspaper that told truth to power. it would do so again. You live, you learn, you grow, and so do your challenges. Lex Luthor became Superman's best adversary. I never asked how Superman could beat Lex Luthor. I always asked how Superman could survive Lex Luthor. How? How could a normal man challenge a Superman? In his pursuit of immortality and ultimate knowledge, Lex aspired to take science to the very edge of magic. And in so doing, he was anointed as Scientist Supreme. Who better to be chosen to advance mortal knowledge? Well, I can think of plenty better suited than him, that's for sure. Clark thought little, if any, for Luthor's title. That was until he learned the previous Scientist Supreme was none other than Jor-El of Krypton. The secret to one's success is that one's success story is pure fiction. Jacob Marlowe was a classic rags-to-riches story. A homeless drunk, Jacob wrote code on liquor labels. One day, he bought a cheap suit, walked into a bank, and exited with a loan. Marlowe then invented Void, an AI quantum prediction system. His advice became so sought that monarchs, presidents, and religious leaders were on a waiting list. Marlowe avoided interviews. Then one morning, he walked into the Daily Planet and asked for Clark Kent. The interviewer and interviewee sat down. Clark listened closely to Marlowe's heartbeat, a rhythm strangely similar to that of a Kryptonian. Marlowe then spoke. Silence. Clark obeyed. Recount. Clark obeyed. Follow. Clark obeyed. Marlowe summoned Void. The living computer then opened a portal into the Phantom Zone. Once upon a time, there was an unnamed planet under a red sun. The Celestials impregnated that planet, created Eternals and Deviants, and awaited emergence. The center, tasked with birthing Deviants, possessed a design flaw. It could birth Deviants without a locality instinct. These Deviants, called Daemonites, could escape the planet. Fearing the Celestials' learning, the Eternals invented a subrace, Karens. Likewise, without a locality instinct, the Karens could replenish their numbers, albeit limitedly. Assuming superiority, they escaped the planet before detonating a core killer. The Celestials assumed an alien attack had occurred. The Karens settled Kara and subjugated the Titanthropes. They colonized hellish worlds under red suns until pinching the Duronians, whose worlds were under yellow suns. A Karen named Rao crash-landed on a remote crystal planet. There, he observed crystal creatures absorbing his crew. Afterward, the creatures began exhibiting Karen traits. Rao sought to use the creatures for his new subrace. Lord Majestros and Lady Xana conceived Kanisha, the codex for the new race. The child's DNA samples were then fed to the crystal creatures. Rao then reshaped the creatures into the cherubim. Rao designed the race with shorter lifespans, but with higher fertility, disposable but plentiful. The Science Guild programmed power activation when only under yellow sunlight and deactivation when under red sun. Shapers crafted debilitating mutations should the child race be cloned. Empaths imprinted a vulnerability to telepathic attack. Sorcerers cursed the cherubim with a weakness to all magic. The Titanthropes implanted a core killer with a 10,000-year countdown within the crystal world, a world renamed Krypton. Furthermore, the new race would lack a word for escape. Finally, cherubim were hardwired to obey Karen commands. Once victorious, the Karens stored their living weapons on Krypton. Meanwhile, the Daemonites possessed Karen after Karen, puppeteering them into mass suicide. The survivors, led by Lord Emp, fled to the Phantom Zone. There, Lord Emp discovered Rao had been keeping a secret. A curious design flaw: empathy. Rao had assumed the crystal creatures absorbed organic life for sustenance and defense. He never thought the creatures were sparing his crew from deprivation and death. He never thought of compassion, mercy, or empathy. Disappointed, he secluded in the Phantom Zone and sought to breed new and improved cherubim. However, the new subraces were defective. Rao could not will himself to euthanize his children. He hid each subrace on different worlds. Meanwhile, the core killer within Krypton completed its 10,000-year countdown. Enraged, Emp executed Rao. Millions of empowered surviving cherubim against a dozen Karens? His own race would go extinct before a single command could be uttered. All hope to restore his empire of red suns appeared lost. Eventually, he encountered 3 reincarcerated phantoms. Marlowe attempted to re-embody them, but his projector was a different model. However, the phantoms spoke of Superman. Emp then dialed his Phantom Zone projector for Earth. Upon arrival, Emp became Jacob Marlowe. His followers became a covert action team, the WildC.A.T.s. Marlowe's plan was to use Superman as a Trojan horse to lure Rao's children into conscription. Fortunately, treachery was afoot. Grifter, the human lover of Lady Zana, extricated Superman. Escaping to Metropolis, he introduced Superman to former Karen super soldier experiments. He then informed Superman of Red Shard. Red Shard was a design feature whereby cherubim could purge yellow sunlight as living bombs. Marlowe no longer wanted a Red Sun Empire. He now wanted a Rainbow Sun Empire. His targets included the Kree, the Shi'ar, and the Skrulls. All he needed was more cherubim. Superman then asked why Grifter went turncoat. Marlowe was a perfect salesman, but Grift knows Grift. Following coordinates stolen by Grifter, Stormwatch began to thwart Marlowe. But how does one beat a quantum prediction system? Well, when you invent artificial intelligence, you also invent artificial dumbness. Void never considered her predictions, only minimized surprise. Superman alerted Daxam, Thoron, Starl, and Phalos. He also secured the ruins of Argo City on Mython, as well as Kandor in the microverse. For Clark, the quest felt like starting a family. The final showdown came at high noon under the red sun of Zoran. Clark's morph suit had been damaged. He was powerless. Zana was about to behead Superman when Marlowe decided to have the last word.
You are not an actual person. You are more of a character. And really not a very convincing one at that. We made you practically perfect in every way. There is no nurturing you. You are property. My property. I paid for you. What am I doing? I'm talking to a glorified action figure. Zana! Behead this thing!
Remember when I asked, how can one beat a quantum prediction system? Another way to do so is to count on it, never expecting the unexpected. Slayton, aka Backlash, betrayed his own people. During the Karen genocide, he escaped to Earth and hid in ancient Atlantis. In modern times, he had joined Canada's Alpha Flight. And the surprises kept coming. Rao left incomplete notes. Although he recorded that Daxamites were allergic to lead, that Sterilons were empowered only under orange and blue suns, and that Theronians were weaker than Kryptonians, he never recorded the flaws of Zeronians. Surprise, the Zeronians were immune to both Argonite radiation and Karen commands. Plus, they were empowered under red suns. You could say the WildC.A.T.s got spayed and neutered. Ouch. Curiously, Marlowe's Phantom Zone projector went missing. Lana Lang once said moving in circles is not moving forward. Clark had come full circle. Now was the time to move forward, straight up, and away. Every year, Latveria celebrates Doomsday, the anniversary of Victor Von Doom's seizing of the throne. Every year, Superman is the guest of honor. The meals, home-cooked. The conversation is polite. The antics are unbelievable. One year, Doom instructed Clark on chess, particularly Alekine's gun. Last year, Clark taught Doom how to ride a dirt bike. Of course, Doom bids Superman farewell with a sharp criticism.
You and I are the mightiest mortals on the planet. While I choose to exert my will upon the world, you choose not. No, in that choice, you nevertheless affect the lives of billions. You condemn them to poverty, disease, famine, and war. You deny what is true, Superman. You too dictate the fate of humanity, one way or the other. I possess the technological and economic methods to end hunger, abolish disease, eliminate poverty. However, because Doom is effective, because Doom is politically unpopular, the world rebukes what Doomly freely offers, while they trust you to establish a post-crisis world. Must Doom give his benevolence through an iron will? Or are you ready to shed your pointless and regressive ethical bounds and really use your power to effect a real and actual change upon the world? When you are ready, you will have become Doom, savior of worlds.
I've been rattling off about Superman. I've been ignoring the actual person, Clark Kent. I've never met someone who loved the truth as much as me. Until I met Clark Kent. He dislikes embedding himself where the muscle is. He prefers to embed himself where the heart is. Case in point, Clark was once embedded with the mutant underground. The global north has spent decades trafficking mutants into all manner of slavery. Meanwhile, Magneto, ruler of Genosha, has held his own populace hostage. Only the mutant underground has bothered to free any mutants. Volunteers, humans, and mutants alike risked life and limb smuggling out Clark's reports. I am proud to say the Daily Planet was the only news source ballsy enough to publish the truth. Of course, Clark dislikes hiding. He prefers being out in the open. Well, he certainly was when he openly opposed Magneto in the skies over Hammer Bay. Man of Steel versus Master of Magnetism. I'll spare everyone Magneto's monologuing. Although Superman is a household name, few really know anything about him. People think he's a god, when in fact he's an alien. People think he has every superpower, when in fact he does not. People think he is, shall we say, old-fashioned when he's actually forward-thinking. Clark had to at last clarify. What's so funny about truth, justice, and the American way? The American way part is, admittedly, ambiguous to some and downright vague to many. For Clark, it simply means a better tomorrow. Clark grew up an only child. The Kents were torn about that decision. I can't judge. From the ruins of Argo City came Kara. She had been the daughter of Clark's uncle, Zor-El. Argo City was an outpost on the moon of Mython. The moon had been thrown far out of orbit by Krypton's explosion. Cast through the Argonite cloud surrounding the solar system, Kara watched helplessly as residents perished slowly, including her parents. Protected in a hibernacle, Kara was launched in search of a safer situation. Ultimately, she landed on Earth. Clark adopted her. Enamored with Earth's heroic age, Kara opted to reshape herself into Superman's sidekick. Eventually, Kara returned to Argo City to properly lay her people to rest. Afterward, she journeyed to the future to restart the Legion. She left us a parting gift, an enigmatic artifact from Argo City, a diamond ring. Clark remembered the significance the ring would one day have. He quietly put it away in the fortress of solitude. I held his hand. Speaking of kids, Chloe Sullivan is my dear cousin, closer to me than my own sister. Although very much loved, Chloe regarded herself as a strange visitor to our family. You see, Chloe was adopted. Seeking her origin, Chloe pursued a journalism career. Her sleuthing led to her capture by Control. Chloe was freed by Sword, whose director, Abigail Brand, revealed her origin. Chloe was a Philosian, an alien able to manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum. While journeying to Phalos, Chloe encountered Othara and Osul-Ra, orphans under the thumb of Mongol. Superman would lend a hand in freeing the twins from Mongol's cultic programming. Clark would then inform Chloe that Philosians, like Kryptonians, are children of Ra. The kids visit often. They're all right. Martha Kent is one of my truest friends. She is also one of my best inspirations. Following Operation Götterdämmerung, Martha opted for a life of action over the life of a reclusive widow.
We, the survivors of Operation Götterdämmerung, have lost our jobs, our homes, and our loved ones. Our lives have been shattered. But we're being told by both parties that it is our job to pick up the pieces. Excuse me? We didn't break anything. It took the entire national membership of watchdogs to rampage across America like it did. Yet only 8% of the entire membership are in prison. The walled-off towns from whence they were radicalized are indeed off the maps now. But those towns still exist, populated and untouched by law enforcement, available and unexposed by the news. Both parties talk of reparations, money, tax breaks, debt relief, bribes. Bribes! When they speak of reparations for Götterdämmerung, they are speaking of how to bribe us from demanding investigations, bribe us from demanding prosecutions, bribe us from demanding the names and faces of those who shattered our lives and took the lives of our loved ones. When we speak of reparations from Operation Götterdämmerung, we speak of truth and justice from the victims and survivors. And then there is the Mutant Registration Act, passed by both parties as a response to the outing of the late President Rickard. As if mutants were the perpetrators and not the victims of Götterdämmerung. Mutants did not invade my home and drag me and my late husband before a firing squad. The watchdogs did. While watchdogs are being allowed bail for their treason, our mutant neighbors and loved ones are being imprisoned for existing. We are the survivors at the very bottom of the list, the lowest of Washington's priorities. How fitting that is for my candidacy. I'm not running from the left, I'm not running from the right. I'm running from the bottom. The bottom is what those in power fear, because when leadership starts looking like those at the bottom, those at the top get scared. They are scared that those at the bottom will turn frustration and anger into something positive. And how does one transmute negative emotions and experiences into something positive? By taking hope and turning that hope into action.
Martha is not only an inspiration to me, but to Beth Ross Rickard as well. You heard that right. Rickard. Like her father before her, Beth also smells like teen president. Full disclosure, I voted for her. And the future keeps getting brighter, dear reader. From 6 heroic souls grew a league of 27 heroes. Each of them brings something different to the table. Strength, speed, stealth, whatever. But they're all equal in at least one way. Each is willing to make the sacrifice a hero needs to make, even the ultimate one. Bibbo was a mentally challenged man who became a fixture in Hobbs Bay. He would ask people to help him get home. All he had was a bus ticket dated about 2 decades ago. Clark Kent wrote a story on him and how he helped the community in exchange for food and shelter. Clark actually did something no other reporter bothered to do. He contacted the police where the ticket was purchased. Eventually, Clark, as Superman, personally flew Bibbo to meet the mother who abandoned him. She had grown tired of taking care of him and no longer cared. After the story, Bibbo obtained identification and found a job at a local diner. He now entertains diners with stories of Superman coming in to visit. He often says, "Isn't it great that Superman cares?" Look, I am not going to get all mushy, okay? I love the guy. All right, that's all you need to know. Dreams cannot exist without nightmares. And the funny thing about tomorrow is that no one thinks of the day after. Last night, Clark awoke hearing the pounding of his mighty heart, feeling a rare sweat on his brow, and, despite his lung capacity, mimicking suffocation. The enigmatic diamond ring with which Clark proposed to Nura was in fact a Phantom Zone communicator. The diamond was actually programmable crystal. The interior contained Sentio Metallico for thought transmission. Nura was contacting him from the Phantom Zone. He and someone else.
You've inspired a world of peace, Clark. A world with no greed or crime, where the struggle is to thrive, not survive. Where mortality is practically an abstract. A world so safe. A world so utopian. A world so boring. You blow your brains out, but there are no guns. I hate you, Clark. Hated you so much. I kept Nura alive.